We often hear the saying, never meet your heroes, usually because the celebrities that we as fans fall in love with are simply playing a character. So most of the time it's the character that we're a fan of, but we confuse that with the person. There have been many unfortunate stories of people being displeased upon meeting their favorite celebrities, but what we wanted to know was how many famous people actually exceeded a fan's expectations upon meeting them. That's why today on I.O. I'm going to be talking about the top 10 times famous people exceeded expectations. But before we get into that, if you could please tap that like button, it shows YouTube that you care about our content. And with that out of the way, let's begin. Coming in number 10, Adam Sandler. Now what's great about this list is that these are all real accounts from people that met these celebrities, and way back in 2004 when Adam Sandler was popping off following his role in 50 First Dates, he had this lovely interaction with a couple in Hawaii. A woman named Mallory recounted the story of meeting Sandler and said, "I went to Hawaii for my first major vacation in 2004 and ran into Adam Sandler on vacation with his wife. We couldn't decide if it was him or not. We wanted to give him his space and privacy, but he walked over and introduced himself to us. His wife complimented my James Bond inspired bathing suit, and they talked with us for a solid 15 minutes or so. This was right after 50 First Dates came out, and he was so humble when I told him how much I loved the movie. He was genuinely kind, hilarious, and incredibly down to earth. He wore an Old Navy outfit just like everybody else. He made us laugh pretty hard when he pointed out David Spade, but warned us not to bother him because he's an asshole." Coming number 9, Jennifer Hudson. Sometimes running into celebrities doesn't always happen in public. In this next story, the gentleman that had the pleasure of meeting Jennifer Hudson was actually there to do a home inspection for her. But what happened next was simply amazing. He goes on to say, "I had the pleasure of meeting Jennifer Hudson. Well, I was actually hired to do a home inspection for her. Even though I just started learning how to play the ukulele, I asked her if she wouldn't mind singing if I played her a song, and I was floored when she agreed to it. She was so sweet and humble and was gracious enough to do a duet with me. It still gives me goosebumps thinking about how extremely talented she was. I was completely gobsmacked at how amazing her voice really was, which paled in comparison to how incredibly nice she was." Coming number 8, Samuel L. Jackson. Now this is fascinating because as much as I love Samuel L. Jackson, I would personally assume that based on his, usual tough guy roles that he probably wouldn't be that approachable as a person. Turns out though, he is perhaps one of the more humble celebrities out there. One fan had a lovely interaction with him and said, "Samuel L. Jackson was hands down one of the kindest and sweetest people I have ever encountered. In the 90s he ran a celebrity golf tournament a few times. When I was 12, I remember asking him if I could bother him for an autograph. His response word for word has stayed with me every day since. Sweetie, don't ever apologize for wanting to talk to me or ask for my autograph. I wouldn't have a job if it wasn't for you." He gave me a sweet smile and hug with an autograph, of course. I'm 36 now and still feel like he's one of the most gentle and true spirits I have ever come across. Coming number 7, Viola Davis. This next story comes from a run-in that this woman had while she was in middle school. Her and her family had been cast as extras in the 2012 film called Won't Back Down. I've worked as an extra before on many film sets, and usually the rule is that you're never allowed to approach or even speak to the main cast, although sometimes they come to you. In this pleasant celebrity story, the woman speaks about how Viola Davis really boosted her confidence. She goes on to say, "When I was in middle school, my family and I were cast as extras in Won't Back Down, starring Maggie Gyllenhaal, Rosie Perez, and Viola Davis, and my encounter with Viola was one of the happiest days of my life. My twin brother, a few of my friends, and I were sitting in the bleachers after a long day of filming, and this beautiful woman, whose presence embodied everything I'd hoped to become one day, walked up to us, pinched my cheeks and said, 'You're so beautiful, I love your cheeks, they're so cute.' At that time, I was being bullied on a daily basis at school, so hearing that my cheeks were cute from Viola Davis gave me so much confidence. The next time my bully called me fat and ugly, I said, 'Well, Viola Davis says otherwise, so you need to rethink your insults now.' Whenever I see Viola Davis on TV, magazine covers, or winning awards today, not only am I reminded of how beautiful of a person she was inside and out, but I'm also reminded of the day she brought out the confidence I didn't even know I had." Coming number 6, Jason Momoa. If you're a fan of superhero movies, then there's a good chance that you could actually meet your heroes at a Comic-Con convention. Usually though, they involve long lineups and then money for a photo with the star. Although Jason Momoa was able to give a fan her very own private photo while also exceeding our expectations. In the story of meeting Jason, the woman goes on to say, "I met Jason Momoa at a convention. I was in a wheelchair and he was in the elevator. I wheeled in and looked up in shock, and he grinned at me and said, 'I'm not that guy, I'm just a good cosplayer.' He got quiet for a moment and then laughed really hard. When my floor came up, even though it wasn't his floor, he insisted on helping me out. I squeaked out a request for a picture and aimed the camera at him. He said, 'Hell no, sweetie, you're getting in this one,' and tossed my camera to his friend. He was so sweet, also huge. 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 I bet meeting him too, you'd be like, yeah man, this man is a giant. This is Aquaman for sure." Coming number 5, Paul McCartney. I recently was listening to a podcast with Mark Maron and Paul McCartney, and Mark said to him that most older artists believe that the work that they're putting out now is the best that they've ever done. He then asked Paul if he felt that way, and without missing a beat, Paul said to Mark, "I was in the Beatles, that's a pretty high bar to beat." The Beatles truly were an international sensation, and so there's no question that when he wants to go to, let's say, a theme park, he's gonna need a bit of a VIP treatment, mainly because he would just get mobbed everywhere he goes. This story, however, just goes to show you how well Paul treated employees employees that assisted him with his private day at a theme park. The man goes on to say, "I used to be a supervisor at a major theme park in the VIP department, so seeing celebrities was a pretty normal thing. One day Paul McCartney came to the park and I went out to meet him along with my tour guides. He was very pleasant and shook my hand, and then we escorted him into the park. Once inside, the guides took him to the rides and I stayed in the office to do paperwork. About 4 hours later, the group came back to the lobby to leave. Paul said goodbye to the guides who were with him and handed them gratuity. Then he saw me and handed me a $50 bill saying, 'Here, have a drink on me, mate.' I saw him for a total of 10 minutes the whole day. I actually still have the $50 bill and I don't think I'll ever spend it." Yeah, you should probably hold on to that 50. Coming in number 4, Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey could be categorized as a bit of a loose cannon if you've only watched his movies and interviews, but for one fan he got to personally experience the Canadian side of Jim Carrey. In the story of meeting Jim, this person says, "Jim Carrey gave me a ride to the gas station after my car ran out of gas in Bel Air. I told him I was a huge fan of Ace Ventura and I could mimic his laugh from the movie. We both had our heads out the window cackling away. He bought my gas and drove me back to my car. It was one of the greatest moments of my life." Coming number 3, Dolly Parton. Now we already know that Dolly Parton is a national treasure, but it is very nice to hear actual stories from people that have had the pleasure of meeting her. And boy oh boy has this story exceeded our expectations. This superfan of Dolly spoke about how she got to meet the star twice and Dolly even remembered who they were. She goes on to say, "I met Dolly Parton twice while working at Dollywood. The first time we were in the park before the season started and she was shooting commercials. When we got there that day they had turned our shop into her dressing room, so we weren't allowed in it at first. But when she found out, she let us in. There were buffet tables set up and she told us to help ourselves and that she didn't need all that food anyway. In between takes she talked to us about what we were doing, where we were going to college, and what we were studying, and so on. The second time was a year later before the park opened. She was doing an interview with one of the local news stations up in the balcony of the big Emporium shop. I was with a friend down below watching, and when it was over, Dolly leaned over the railing and yelled, 'Hey, I remember you, stay right there.' She came downstairs, gave me a big hug, and asked how I was. That was one of the most surreal moments ever. A flipping legend like Dolly remembered me a year later." Coming number 2, Zendaya. Zendaya started off acting at a very young age, but even though she was in her early teens, she still had so much love for the fans that helped her get to where she was. While at Disneyland, this fan recounts meeting her favorite Disney star and said, "I met Zendaya at Disneyland when she was first starting out. I was 21 years old at the time, but I still knew who she was because Disney was always on in my house, and I thought it'd be cool to get a picture with her. Understandably, her security was pushing her through and trying to keep the fans away. Zendaya stopped her security and said, 'Look, nobody standing here would have a job right now if it wasn't for people like them watching the show and supporting me. I'd really like it if you'd let me have a few minutes with my fans to thank them. It's the least I can do.' And it was really surprising. She was only 13 or 14 at the time, I think, and she took pictures with all the fans who asked, including my group. She even complimented my boots and hair. She was overall really gracious and nice, especially for a young teen who suddenly became famous in the public eye." Last but certainly not least, on our number 1 spot, Keanu Reeves. Much like Dolly Parton, Keanu Reeves has a bunch of stories about how kind he is to his fans. Although this one takes the cake. A fan that was lucky enough to meet Keanu said, "I remember seeing Keanu Reeves in New York a long time ago when I was young and probably very annoying preteen. I yelled out, 'Yo, Neo,' and then I mimicked the bullet dodge motion from The Matrix. He looked back at me, laughed, and mirrored the same move in acknowledgement. It's such a great memory because I feel like anyone would have been justified in getting annoyed and shrugging a kid off, but instead he was a good sport and humored me. I'll never forget it." Well folks, that has been the top 10 times famous people exceeded expectations, but before we get out of here, I'm going to check out some of your comments from the video titled "Britney Spears' Mom Makes Big Statement Against Jamie Spears." Savage Queen says he should be obligated to give back all of her money that he spent on himself. I mean, that'd be hard to track, but I feel like you're right on that one. Claude Reyes says, "Lynn, I'm glad you're doing this, but I know your motives are just to wash your hands clean. You're just part of the shady people in Britney's life." I'd like to think that she's not, but who knows? Michelle SP says she's her mother, why didn't she help her for years? And he's her ex-husband, which means she knew all along how bad he was. She divorced him and he doesn't live with her, so why did she have to whisper? She should have protected her daughter. Look, she is protecting her daughter right now, and I think what happens is we see little bits and pieces from their life coming out in the news, and it's very easy to assume and fill in the blanks of, well, if I was in that position, I would be taking care of her. We don't know all the specifics that are happening behind the scenes. We don't know if there was, let's say, one of Britney's security details that reports to Jamie that happened to be in the house with her. We honestly don't know, so we just have to keep waiting for more and more information to come out, and that will reveal who these people truly are. Trying to make $1 out of 15 cents says, "The bad thing is that they had a messy divorce, so even if her statement is valid, his defense team could pass it off as a bitter ex-wife." God, I hope not. Let's just pray that doesn't happen. Ali Mimi says that judge needs to be investigated together with Jamie Spears or Spears whatever. Yeah, I learned that there was a lot of backroom deals that were happening right around the time of this conservatorship popping off, so maybe the judge will get investigated. I think that will come down to public pressure though. But either way guys, that is the end of today's video. Thank you so much for watching. I've been your host Johnny Rogers, and until next time, stay classy YouTube, or at least try. My twin brother, a few friends of a few of my friends. Okay. My twin brother, a few of my friends, and I were. My twin brother, a few. Oh my God! I hate reading quotes from people. God damn it! I don't know what's going on with my reading skills today. Also can't breathe. He then asked Paul if he was in between takes. Oh my God. There it is. I'm gonna take that again.